Hello, everyone. My name is Eric. I'm a limited licensed master social worker and psychotherapist. I've been working with children, youth, and adults for 10 years. On this week's episode of So You Want to Learn Psychology, we conclude the Valentine's Day holiday with some readings about love, and more specifically, we review Erich Fromm's popular work, The Art of Loving. What is love? The pretense of love. The variety of feelings and strivings that can be covered by the term love, or that is subjectively felt as such, is astonishing. It may cover a parasitic expectation on the part of the person who feels too weak or too empty to live his own life. In a more aggressive form, it may cover a desire to exploit the partner, to gain through him success, prestige, and power. It may express a need to conquer someone and to triumph over him, perhaps in a sadistic way. It may mean the need to be admired and to so secure affirmation of one's idealized image. For the very reason that love in our civilization is so rarely a genuine affection, maltreatment and betrayal abound. We are left with the impression, then, that love turns to contempt, hate, or indifference. But real love does not swing around so easily. By this quote alone, it is easier to understand what is not love than what is. Love in itself is truly the deepest mystery. We tend to think of love as a pleasant sensation, which to experience is a matter of chance, something someone falls into if he is lucky. This is a quote that opens the first chapter, titled, Is Love an Art? To Fromm, love is not a mystery, it is an art. And that means it can be practiced, and must not be taken for granted. He continues, Not that people think love is not important, they are starved for it. As they watch endless numbers of films about happy and unhappy love stories, they listen to hundreds of trashy songs about love, yet hardly anyone thinks that there is anything that needs to be learned about love. This peculiar attitude is based on several premises, which, either singly or combined, tend to uphold it. Most people see the problem of love primarily as that of being loved, rather than that of loving, of one's capacity to love. Hence, the problem for them is how to be loved, how to be lovable. In the pursuit of this aim, they follow several paths. One, which is especially used by men, is to be successful, to be powerful and rich as the social margin of one's position permits. Another, especially used by women, is to make oneself attractive, by cultivating one's body, dress, etc. Many of the ways to make oneself lovable are the same as those used to make oneself successful. As a matter of fact, what most people in our culture mean by being lovable is essentially a mixture of being popular and having sex appeal. Having Horney's first quote in mind about what impulses, wishes, and fantasies sometimes masquerade under the false banner of love, we can easily tell the difference between what is vanity, narcissism, dependency, and dominance, but that still leaves us without a definition or a strong intuition about what love actually is. One of the stronger points from Erich Fromm's theses about love is that in our world, we have the unfortunate condition of commodifying love. Fromm, a Marxist philosopher and psychoanalyst, made the accurate assumption that instead of truly loving, we, instead, define love as a simple transaction. I will provide this person with a measure of safety and security, and they will provide me with the same. Now, that is probably the noblest version of that transaction, but it can realistically be said that loving transactions range from I will provide financial stability and they will provide me with unlimited sexual availability, to I will provide complete servitude and submission if they provide an environment where my masochistic suffering is justified and righteous. These kinds of transactions are sometimes described as loving relationships. Yet, as comedic and tragic as it is, love, in and of itself, has not once been mentioned. I've worked with many people searching for love throughout my career. I work with men and women who have been abused, mistreated, and taken advantage of. We all know and recognize that these conditions are not conditions of love. I've worked with people who seek love from others who do not love themselves, an exercise in futility. I have also found love myself, which is something I say somewhat cautiously. For this reason, love is so hard to pin down that trying to help people find love is generally a big waste of time. But finding love for oneself is possibly the most fruitful and rewarding of all journeys. According to Fromm, learning the art of loving requires discipline, and in order to practice discipline, we must be able to concentrate. It sounds like we're veering further from the path of love, but let's hear him out. Fromm says that concentration is by far more difficult to practice in our culture, in which everything seems to act against the ability to concentrate. The most important step in learning concentration is to learn to be alone with oneself without reading, listening to the radio, smoking, or drinking. Indeed, to be able to concentrate means to be able to be alone with oneself, and this ability is precisely a condition for the ability to love. Paradoxically, the ability to be alone is the condition for the ability to love. Is this wisdom or is this bullshit? I think that depends on your experience, but from my perspective, Fromm is absolutely onto something. Although Fromm had a lot of issues with Jung and his theories, I'm sure they would agree on the fact that extremely extroverted people, meaning those whose meaning, values, and validation come from external objects, are always chasing blindly the things that they think will provide them with a feeling of internal security. As we know, this is little more than a useless endeavor. Borderline and histrionic personalities are incredibly socially extroverted, and they absolutely rely on the validation of others as their primary source of self-worth. Threats of real or perceived abandonment, dramatic lack of self-esteem and self-concept, and the relentless, impulsive search for the next best partner or the next best thing are common signs and symptoms of these kinds of personality disorders. But what does it say about why introverts find it so hard to find love? If love of oneself is a prerequisite for true love, then shouldn't it be easier for introverted people whose meaning, purpose, and validation already come from within? The difficulty comes from the recognition that to love oneself is incredibly important, but to only love oneself is narcissism, not introversion. Fromm writes, "The main condition for the achievement of love is overcoming one's narcissism. The narcissistic orientation is one in which one experiences as real only that which exists within himself, while the phenomena in the outside world have no reality in themselves, but are experienced only from a viewpoint of their being useful or dangerous to one. The opposite pole to narcissism is objectivity. It is the faculty to see people and things as they are, objectively, and to be able to separate this objective picture from a picture which is formed by one's desires and fears. All forms of psychosis show the inability to be objective to an extreme degree. For the insane person, the only reality that exists is within him, that of his fears and desires. He sees the world outside as symbols for his inner world, as his creation. All of us do the same when we dream." More on Fromm's theory of dreams in The Forgotten Language, a video coming soon. The ability to love depends on one's capacity to emerge from narcissism. The process of emergence, of birth, of waking up, requires one quality as a necessary condition: faith. The practice and art of loving requires the practice of faith. Fromm distinguishes from rational and irrational faith being the acceptance of something based on submission to an authority, and rational faith being rooted in one's own experience, in the confidence of one's own power of thought, observation, and judgment. Rational faith is rooted in an independent conviction based upon one's own productive observing and thinking in spite of the majority opinion. He continues, "While to many power seems to be the most real of all things, the history of man has proved it to be the most unstable of all achievements. To have faith requires courage, the ability to take risks, and the readiness even to accept pain and disappointment. This courage is very different from the courage which Mussolini spoke about when he used the slogan, 'to live dangerously.' This kind of courage is the courage of nihilism. It is rooted in a destructive attitude toward life, in the willingness to throw away life because one is incapable of loving it. The courage of despair is the opposite of courage of love, just as the faith in power is the opposite of faith in life. Love is an act of faith, and whoever is of little faith is also of little love. We end our discussion of love and faith with a simple statement Fromm makes about the necessity of activity and practice in our cultivation of the art of loving. It is particularly prescient of our world situation today. Love is an activity. If I love, I am in a constant state of active concern with the loved person, but not only with him or her. For I shall become incapable of relating myself actively to the person loved if I am lazy, if I am not in a constant state of awareness, alertness, and activity. Sleep is the only proper situation for inactivity. The state of awakeness is one in which laziness should have no place. The paradoxical situation with a vast number of people today is that they are half asleep when they are awake, and they are half awake when they're asleep, or when they want to be. Maybe true love is difficult because love requires action, devotion, attention, concentration, and constant attendance. In our society, we neither have the time nor desire for such constancy. We desire rest, complacency, little work, and much gain. It's a sickness that has been multiplied by our own technological advancements, as well as our own philosophical, psychological, and spiritual decline. Seeing it this way, love has never been so difficult, and so it's no wonder why people get caught up in the relations that advertise love, mimic love, and disguise themselves as love, and yet there is none to be found. If it is true, as I have tried to show, that love is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the problem of human existence, then any society which excludes, relatively, the development of love must, in the long run, perish of its own contradiction with the basic necessities of human nature. Indeed, to speak of love is not preaching, for the simple reason that it means to speak of the ultimate and real in every human being. That this need be obscured does not mean that it does not exist. To analyze the nature of love is to discover its general absence today, and to criticize the social conditions which are responsible for this absence. To have faith in the possibility of love as a social and not only an exceptional individual phenomena is the rational faith based on the insight into the very nature of man. That concludes this week's episode of So You Want to Learn Psychology? I hope you enjoyed. I personally really like Erich Fromm's work, so we'll continue to cover more of his writings in the future. Remember to cultivate your own self-love and realize that you are worthy of love despite your flaws. Stop comparing your life to the lives of others. Thanks for your support. Until next time.